Ask him. What? Help him with the Bastion.
Bro, I'll just tell him put in all the cards that draw a card.
Exactly. Oh.
Hey everyone, this is Curb, and I bring you another standard match. Kind of feels like it's been a while since I did a standard video. But anyways, let's get into it. And today is very special because I believe this is the first match that I'm going to be posting that is actually going to be using the new energy mechanic. So now we did actually get this a couple weeks ago. Fated Clash did come out, I believe, just last week at the time of the recording of this video. But of course, this is actually before Fated Clash did actually come out. So we're going to be featuring two decks without any of the Fated Clash support. Of course, we do have Bastion on the left. Is that left? No, that's left. Why am I having so much trouble with it? Anyways, going up against right. Zorga on the right. Sheesh, I really am out of practice of this. Anyways, getting into the match itself, we do have Bastion going first. Of course, following up Zorga using that Rancor Chained skill, discarding the Mask of Hydreigon there, calling down a Philander. Definitely a very good play. Philander being a very excellent card in like just pretty much in general. It allows you to do things like this, like playing the fact that it's a grade 1 is just like really good because it lets you deck thin straight away from your first turn, and assuming you're going second, you can't just like call it, swing with it, and you know, it's just a good time. Anyways, Philander is going to be swinging in at the Vanguard for an 8k. We do actually see a defensive being hit here, going to go for the 1 to pass, and thankfully we're not punished. It feels like every time I do that myself, I always get punished by that. But anyways, Bastion discarding a second Spiral Cutie here, using its skill, of course, to draw another card. And as the pilot of this Bastion likes to say, drawing cards, good. Anyways, using the skill of, I believe it's Forte, actually getting a grade 4 Bastion off the top. So one of those rare Bastion ride line W's where you don't just straight up call a trigger. Anyway, swinging the Vanguard, hitting it with a 15k guard. Definitely very understandable. Like the Bastion was at a very awkward number there. That would have been like a 15k guard, so you might as well take that. And then if you do take it, you have the chance of hitting a defensive. If you hit a defensive, you shut down that other attack without having to commit anything from hand. But of course, in that case, you just commit the 15k to OT to pass, which is like perfectly fine. You do not want to really be at high damage when you're going up against Bastion, just because once it gets to that grade 3 turn, things can get really out of control with their attack powers and the drive checks, and just like supplementing their hand. So definitely correct play on the Zorga's part to just, you know, not be at high damage. Being at 1 here is perfectly fine. We do see the double Shadow Cloak here, dumping a copy of Gather Upon Me, as well as that Spiritual Body Condensation. Spiritual Body Condensation, definitely a really old card, all the way straight from BT1. So I think a couple of Zorga lists have started cutting it, but I do definitely still think it's a bit of a valid card. I mean, it is just like a free revival for a soul. It doesn't really do much else outside of that, so which is probably why a lot of lists probably end up cutting it, or at least like playing it at 1, but I still think it's perfectly fine. Anyways, we've got two 18k columns here. That Philander is not quite yet up to 10 cards, so it's not going to be at an extra 10k. And of course, you know, Vanguard doesn't have a booster, so it's just going to be 10k. So I think the guard pattern here is we kind of just take this first attack, hope for a defensive, because one defensive does shut down these other 2 attacks. And then of course, since we didn't get the defensive, you did the same thing that Zorga did, just commit the 15k to block that Vanguard to OT to pass. Now this other attack is 18. That is technically another 15k guard, so it's a little bit awkward. Theoretically, you could take this just to guarantee you have like CB for things like maybe Alden, and then you can also use like, well, you can't use Bastion skill this next turn, but in case you want to use the CB on anything else. Perfectly also fine, valid choice, just discarding or, you know, guarding that attack, because, you know, being at 2 is also fine. Zorga does also hit like a truck, so you do kind of have to be mindful of that too. We did see the Stride Fodder Dragon discarded to ride up, allowing us to draw another card, because, you know, drawing cards good. We see a Grander Edge being called here. Definitely the ideal Bastion card there to be just, you know, to be the attacker there. We do see the Bracing Angel Ladder, pretty much just play there for the extra 5k, because, you know, Zorga doesn't really have any border control. We do see another Grander Edge being called over that Bastion Prime, which is a bit of an interesting play. If you just look at it, it can seem very awkward because, like, why don't you just move it back? You have things like the Stride Fodder Dragon. It could give it boost. You've got things, I guess if you play that one grade 3, it can give things boost. But at the same time, I think the real reason why we're doing that is just to get a Bastion name in the drop zone. That does leave us open to some Sapient Owl plays, allowing us to kind of countercharge and, you know, prevent being damage denied. So definitely not a bad play in any respect. So we do see a double trigger here, a heal trigger that is going to be off, prompted with a critical trigger dealing 2 damage. But of course, unfortunately, we do see a over trigger being put there as the first damage, so Zorga is going to be stuck at 3 damage here. He's going to be committing those last 2 swings at the rear guards. We did give trigger power to that Shadow Cloak, but honestly, just like the number is too big. Like, there's no point in guarding that Shadow Edge, Shadow Cloak. It's just like, it's just not really that necessary. Like, yeah, sure, you miss out on the potential to maybe bounce something back with your Alka Magic this turn, but it's really not a big loss, especially if you do already have your RPDs set up in the drop zone. Like, they're going to be overcalled anyway, so not really a big issue in that, right? So looks like we are just probably deciding what we want to discard. We're going to be discarding that RPD. Very simple and easy choice. Not sure why we decided to think so much on that. Running into that Zorga, that very nice looking SIR Zorga. But unfortunately, you do not stay on that Zorga. I remember, do you guys remember when there was like this huge debate over red versus blue? I remember. Which one came out on top? Like, did any either of them get set up on top? Anyways, so looks like we are using the third Shadow Cloak, discarding a Mask of Hydreigon. I'm just realizing now that we did dump, or we discarded one earlier in the game, so I believe we did actually add it back from the what's it called, the Tears Husk Dragon. Otherwise that's an illegal play, because Shadow Cloak isn't just a straight up a dump for anything. But I do definitely think I see that Mask of Hydreigon in the hand. So maybe that's what we were thinking about discarding, because you do kind of need to get the Mask of Hydreigon in the drop zone. And Zorga, of course, is one of those decks that doesn't actually want to play the Mask of Hydreigon. Yeah, we definitely see it there in the hand. But, you know, if we have the Shadow Cloak, like, why did we think about that long? Anyways, I don't know why I'm nitpicking. Let's get back into the match. So we do have Zorga Mask going into there. Of course, the Mask of Hydreigon that was milled there. Looks like we do have 2 options for orders that we could play this turn. I do see the Habitat as well as the Mask of Hydreigon. I think you just go for the Habitat there. That's like 95% better than like that Mask of Hydreigon. I think like the real decision here is what you want to Alka Magic it with. It looks like we're actually going to go for the Gather Upon Me, You Wandering Souls. So I think that might be a little bit risky if we do only have that one order in hand. Well, we do still have the Bist Alvin to like get things back. So theoretically, we're not completely out of orders here, as we are going to be, of course, using that Alka Magic. Checking the top 7, seeing what we can get from that top 7. Theoretically, if we see any like defensive cards like PGs, we could just call them out and then use Shadow Cloak to bounce it straight back, assuming we have a decent attacker for the other column. But instead, it looks like we are going to be getting a Spoof Shade there, who's going to be serving as an 18k booster, kind of in the same vein as Philander there. So you've got 2 18k columns, just like increasing the amount of power that those columns are going to be having. And of course we do have to proc the RPD there from the drop zone. Calling it back, it gets another 10k, and then the extra critical, because of course it was it did see the Alka Magic there. So we've got 2 pretty big columns on either side with the Persona Ride power along with Zorga Mask's extra 10k to the front row. That's going to allow us to do a lot of damage this turn. Looks like we are just going to be prompting the Bist Albus here, kind of guaranteeing ourselves to have that order for next turn. I think the biggest decision is like, what do you want to have for next turn? We do have, I think, just Mask of Hydreigon and then 2 revival spells. So it looks like we're going to go for the Spiritual Body Condensation. In all honesty, it doesn't matter too much. which order you're grabbing. We don't really have very much here. I guess you could have grabbed the the habitat if you really wanted to play it again. But at this point, I think you're pretty good on things. But you know, at the same time, like deck thinning is never like bad. Like that's one of the reasons why habitat is such a really good card. It just kind of serves as like 4 extra copies of like whatever else is in your deck. Assuming you get lucky enough and you don't just see like 7 triggers and a PG off the top. But of course, we do see the Vanguard swing here for a very powerful 33. Probably the easiest, I would say, to attack, the least threatening, because that RPD does have the crit. Normally, they would have double RPD, so a lot of times you end up having to take the Vanguard swing. But of course, we're not in that situation right now. So, not really a huge issue there. Like, I think we just take this one because like it's not really that threatening. We don't see anything off of the triple drive there. Just gonna be taking it, not hitting a defensive. It's just 1 damage. The real attack that you have to worry about is this 58k column from the RPD. One thing that is, I guess, important to know, it is going to be seeing APG, but we don't actually have the Neil serving in the drop zone, so we are just, of course, just limited to these 3 attacks here, which of course is going to make this turn not really as threatening as, you know, it could be, as we do take that rear guard swing. So just taking 2 damage here. Kind of a power turn, but at the same time, it's really hard to have a power turn when, you know, your opponent is at like 1 damage. So it wasn't really that threatening. We see the Persona Ride coming out from Bastion here, using the Energy Blast 7 to draw another card. Did you guys remember that energy is a thing? I completely forgot, because at this point, energy doesn't really make as much of an impact. We have to kind of wait till BT1 for that, which matches for BT1 will be coming soon, I promise. I just need to actually get around to the editing process and, you know, actually get them put out there. Anyways, we're looking to see a pretty powerful turn from Bastion here. We got the double Grandeur Edge here, as well as, you know, your Vanguard. So a total of 4 drive checks here, 4 attacks, considering that now the opponent is at grade 3, so we can actually use the second skill of Bastion. So now we do see the Sapien Owl coming down here, putting just, I guess, a random card there. So we probably did have the Bastion, the Sapien Owl, which is why we overcalled the Bastion Prime there. But of course, we didn't actually need a counter charge. So I guess we're just doing this to add an additional amount of extra pressure here. So we did make a little bit of an error with the attack power there. Grandeur Edge is actually at 38 thanks to the Persona Ride, not 28. So it's going to be calling for another 15k or another 10k shield there. I think we did also misguard again. Was that just a 25k shield? It should have been a 30k shield, but whatever. Anyway, swinging the Bastion, going to be taking that swing, not seeing anything off the drive checks. Getting a defensive critical trigger there, so it's going to make these attacks that much easier to guard. But we are going to be just taking the second swing of the Grandeur Edge, hitting into a front trigger. So this other Grandeur Edge is going to be swinging for very big, a nice 48. With double defensives there, we do have a pretty good chance of just guarding this, but it looks like the number of cards we have in our hand is not enough, and we're going to be taking it and being saved by a 6 damage heal. So the game normally would have just been over here and now, but thanks to that 6 damage heal, we are actually going to be continuing the match for a little bit longer. So looks like Zorga does have the follow-up Persona Ride. So realistically, all they need to do is kind of set up here. So what do we need to do to kind of have our most powerful turn? So first off, we do need to get rid of that RPD on board. We need it in the drop zone so that we can, you know, actually revive it once we do our Alka Magic. We do have our Alka Magic set up. We've got that Spiritual Body Condensation that we added to our hand during the last turn. So we can just use that if push comes to shove. And we do have the Cloud of Miasma, so we'll be able to add another little bit of power. So looks like we do see the Philander coming down here to overcall onto the RPD, and we're dumping another RPD. We definitely had 2 really good targets there. The probably best target was that RPD that you did see going into the drop zone there. Another thing that we definitely do want to kind of get into the drop zone is that Neil serving. That's going to allow us to get that extra attack that, you know, is just going to be good to help us close things out, because we do already have that Dragon Tree set up there. So I guess we're just probably looking at what we have left in our drop zone. I believe we still do actually have the Zorga's other skill, so if we have anything impressive in our drop that we want to get back, we could theoretically just add, like call anything back using the Zorga Masques skill. I believe you remove the Zorga, a different name Zorga, in order to just revive something. I think it's been forever since I've seen anyone actually use that skill, but theoretically what we could do here is we could Alka Magic, revive some stuff, and then, of course, we could also revive a booster for Zorga. But I guess, you know, that's that's just the lines that I'm seeing here. I'm sure all you watching Zorga players have like a million other things that you think that would be better. But I'm not a Zorga player, even though I do main Stoicheia. Zorga is the one deck that I have not really touched in Stoicheia, which is kind of funny considering I played things as bad as Mythiarch. But anyways, we do see the Spiritual Body Condensation being Alka Magic here with that Cloud Miaza, going to be Counterblasting one, Soul Blasting one. For the cost, of course, we do get an extra 5k to the front row units, and then, of course, we're going to be able to revive two things here. Probably, I'm not sure what we really realistically have to revive here. I think what we do here is we get something better to revive, to call over the Bis Alvis, and then maybe we just get something to call over the Shadow Cloak just to make our Vanguard more powerful. Alternatively, if we do have any, like, you know, like powerful units, like defensive units, that's what I'm trying to say, like PGs, if we had any of those in our drop zone, we could have just called it, and then we can use Shadow Cloak to you know, actually just revive something. Not sure how the timing works here. I'm just realizing, because I do know that the orders do technically resolve all at the same time, so I'm not sure if you can revive the Philander that we just overcalled here. That's something for the comments to, you know, yell at me about. But looks like that we're going to be doing that anyway, so the overcall Philander is actually going to be called over the Spoof Shade. Not sure why we didn't just call it behind the Vanguard, considering, you know, we could just given it more power. There's probably a reason, I mean, but the one thing that it does accomplish is that Philander is, even though we did the order wrong, technically the first thing that you call gets the 5k because, you know, we resolve Spiritual Body Condensation first. It doesn't really matter since we're just reviving two things, so the Philander is going to be the one getting the extra 5k power there. Looks like we're going to be using the Bis Alvis to get Counterblast 1 and then get a second Dragon Tree marker, which is why I suppose we got it there. Personally, I think I would have preferred to, like, just keep the Spoof and then call a Philander behind the Vanguard. You get 10k more power, but I do suppose this way you get an extra 5k power on your other RPD column. Looks like we accidentally put the Philander away. Not sure where it went. I kind of missed that. But we do have two columns that are pretty much the same number here. Going to be very, very powerful. And of course they are just... Oh, there's the Philander. I totally missed it. We use a Shadow Cloak to bounce the Philander to add it back to our hand so that we could actually just call it back and deck thin. So definitely... I'm not sure here. Like, once again, you Zorga mains can yell at this Zorga player. Just be courteous. But definitely, I don't know, like, if you had called the Philander behind the Vanguard, you do definitely get a lot more power on it, but at the same time, like, they're probably just going to be taking your Vanguard. It's already, like, 33, which is, like, more than powerful enough, and then by doing this play, you do technically deck thin one, so there's definitely upsides to either way that you could do it. I'm not really going to say which one is better. I could probably say which one I would have done, which is, you know, the first thing that I said. But at the same time, you know, I think that this play is definitely valid as well. So whatever. Anyways, getting into the match, we are of course just going to be swinging with that Vanguard first. We don't have the Neil serving, so we've got no real reason to, like, wait on the Vanguard. So swinging the Vanguard first for just that 33, or actually 38. My mistake, because the extra 5k that the Cloud Miasma is going to be giving us. So it looks like Bastion is considering whether they want to hard guard this. I think in this case, you can probably just risk taking it. You're at 3. The only way that they can actually kill you is if they, you know, get double crit, and they've only got 2 drives, so the chances that are happening are not super likely, but looks like we are just going to be taking it. We do see a critical trigger being flipped here, giving the power to that RPD, and then the critical to the Vanguard, which is, I guess we can talk about that in a little bit, but I think we saw another trigger flipped over there, and honestly, in this instance, you could have just given the crit to the rear guard, because there's not really a difference in your opponent being at 4 or 5 in this instance, because both of these are lethal swings. So I think that just limiting your opponent's counterblast and limiting their potential to get defensive triggers would have probably been the better play there. I mean, Bastion already has like 3 face-up damage, so giving them 1 damage isn't really gonna make that much of a difference. But at the same time, you know, you minimize on defensive, so I think that was a little bit of a misplay. We should have just given the crit to one of the RPDs, and then swung with it, or just given all effects to one of those. So just like give them, I guess technically damage deny, but it doesn't make a huge difference. But in the especially since we didn't see any defenses, but in hindsight, you know, you probably should have just not given the crit to the Vanguard, because you can probably kill from 4. Like, even if they're at 4, that's much riskier to take their Vanguard swing, because, you know, if they flip a crit, you just die. If they take either of the RPDs, they just die. So, small misplay there. Anyways, we do see a Spiral Cutie being used here, and then a second Sapient Owl being called. So, things are not really looking great for Zorga now. That was kind of your kill turn. You did manage to get quite a few resources out of Bastion, and another PG, but now you're in a very dire strait. You've got at least 1 heal out, and of course that overtrigger out. You've got a sizable number of cards in your hand, so it's definitely feasible to survive this turn, but at the same time, you've got 4 drive checks coming. You've got really powerful swings here. This one is the smallest one, being 38. That Vanguard is at 43, and that other column is another 48. And like I said, 4 drive checks. I think the realistically best way you have to live this is to bet on a 6 damage heal once again, but unfortunately this time it is not going to be happening. So that is going to be the end of the match. I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to do all those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.